Welcome back to the second in this 10-part series that I'm calling Retrospective, because it's about looking back. This episode, we discuss about whether or not at the end of our master's degree, we felt prepared for the quote-unquote real world. What the paths of our lives post-graduation looked like, and maybe what could have been more emphasized or been done that might have been more useful or offered in that education to make it so that our careers and lives may have gone smoother, easier, whatever kind of phrase you want to put to it. In this episode, in this order, you will hear from Peter Wu, Lizea Lyons, Allison Goldberg, Barbara Bartos, Joram Wahlberger, Amanda Marchand, Mira Hecht, Sonia Heinrichsen, Brett Gottschall, and Ricardo Rivera. Do you feel that graduate school sort of prepared you for the real art industry? And
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well, I sort of caught that was going to be the answer, but yeah. But if not, what could they have done better or differently, or how could it have been done in a way that would be more preparatory?
For me, it would have been nice if they, had some kind of, the critical classes they had and about theory and stuff, that was very helpful for me to kind of figure out what I was doing and what I wanted to do. But I think classes like preparing you how to have skills that relate to art, that would have been nice. Or even financial planning. That would have been great.
Contract law.
Yeah. Or just telling you how maybe the art world works a little bit. Just a little bit. And we don't need to have a lot of classes like that, but just something kind of summary of all of those three things and being able to have a little bit of a more knowledge walking into it, so that, some artists out of grad school, I didn't do it, but some out of grad school, like they took their portfolio to galleries, and now you don't do that. You know what I mean? You don't have that in that leather envelope and you're passing things around. You don't do that. So there's ways of conducting yourself, obviously. And I wish there was more, like just a practical class to kind of tie within everything else.
I mean, just since I started this podcast, 2.5 years ago now, I have learned so many things that I did wrong in my career. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I wish that basically I wish this podcast had existed when I was in school, so that I could have heard all these realities of the way it was, such as grants. They didn't teach us how to write grants. Nope. They didn't teach us they always said, oh, you should do a residency. I remember a lot of the people saying, oh, you should apply for residency, but they never told us why residencies were important. They are Jesus. I'm a professor now, and so part of this is that I want to understand how it works, so that when I'm teaching, that I'm teaching the right things, basically.
Yeah. Something like this podcast would have been extremely helpful, and just having some more reality based, and actually teachers kind of being more vulnerable about their own careers and how they've gone through, because a lot of these professors are, they are trying to either relive or kind of explain their history also, but not really talk about the things that the hiccups, they're just trying to highlight the best things. And that's great. We want to hear that. But, a little vulnerability would have been nice.
It does feel like they were building their own sort of egos and sort of talking about the great parts, and they didn't really ever talk about any of the difficulties. I do remember one professor talking about having problems with a landlord for their studio, and how that was an issue, but that's about it.
I think that's actually changing now. I think there are some institutions that are trying to bring in a little bit more practicality in it. I do a lot of talks at university, so I do spend some time talking about the hiccups and just being a person of color and culture, the difficulties in that also, and navigating this world, because a lot of the time this world isn't really built for people like me, or women, or queer or trans people. It's just not really accepting too much. You may be hot at certain points, but it's just like, as a sustainability, it's not the same thing as for a white boy painter or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot more difficult to navigate, and trying to build a community, and also going through art school, and learning Western art, and then that being positioned as the best, and that's the only thing that matters, is really quite ignorant. And I think that's changing too. I think in a lot of spaces and a lot of schools are changing that ideology, which is great. But there still has to be a fundamental thing that changes from the top and bottom. It requires more representation in the world itself. So, and I think we're working towards that. The gallery that I do, the virtual gallery, 90% are women, queer, trans, and artists of color. So I'm trying to give back and reflect back on that a little bit. So yeah.
I was listening to you talk to other people about that. Like we had that one class, professional practices for artists, and it was like, who was it? Lance Funk and Ray Beldner, who did not get along. And I remember learning to make slide labels, like, which about set me over the edge because I couldn't line them up in the printer properly. And so, it's all changed since then. Like, I don't know what I got out of that class.
Okay, well let's roll with that. If you had the chance to go back and teach in an art school right now, what kind of things would you choose to be putting more emphasis on?
I think because there, as you said, there's so much stuff out there. There's so much visual stuff out there. What I think students need help with is critiquing what they're consuming and being critical viewers. I think there needs to be more emphasis on critically consuming culture, not just about making it, because there's so many people out there putting stuff into the world. Anyone, as you said, anyone can be a photographer, anyone can be a writer because there's blogs, and anyone can, but how do we sift through all of this and decide what are the important voices, and what are the what's really important? I feel like that was not emphasized at all.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned the benefit of curators and sort of the taste makers and stuff like this, but the problem with that I find is that then also becomes another form of cult of personality and
Sure,
popularity contests that,
sure.
like, I was horrible in high school. I never fit in high school, and now basically I feel like that's just translated into a larger, more adult version of high school that I call
Mhm,
the art world, that I
mhm,
also don't fit into any cliques or groups in the same
mhm.
way. And I feel like a lot of us sort of end up in that. Either we're in the in group or we're in the out group, and that's it. That there's no changing that system, unfortunately.
But if the in-group ultimately only means perpetuating the status quo and making money, who wants to be in the in-group anyways?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean making money. It means maybe having institutional exhibitions and publishing books. Let's say, so like creating monographs. I mean, there are lots of other sort of what I consider like in-group things. Like, I know people. I met this one girl. I couldn't, or no, it was this couple from Israel. They literally they don't have an apartment. Okay, so they have no home, and
Uh-huh.
they just go from residency to residency to residency, and they just live that way.
And is that do they enjoy that?
They love it.
Uh-huh,
They
uh-huh,
love it. And
uh-huh.
I'm just like, that's an amazing, I mean, and they even designed their art to make it. They do soft sculptures, so
Uh-huh.
like fabric based sculptures. So what they do is they take all the stuffing out of them, put it in a suitcase, take it to the next place, put the stuffing back in, put up an exhibition, then take the stuffing out, and they just keep. That's the way they work. And I'm like, so they actually created an art practice to revolve around their idea of desire to like travel the world and do all these
Mhm.
things. I'm like, what an amazing idea. Why couldn't somebody come up with that a long time ago?
Mhm.
So cool.
I think I would have liked someone tell me to make a plan. I've never made a plan. I've never been told I should. I never, not even the idea of like, where do you want to be? This kind of question. Probably at 18, somebody would laugh. I would have laughed. Somebody would ask me this. But by the time you apply for grad school, you should have an idea. So that those 2 years, you build them in a structured way, especially considering the American system of 4 years of do whatever the hell you want and master, you focus on something.
So I had a lot of that already from my business. You know, I did contracts and I talked to lawyers about contracts, and I did marketing for myself because I had to go and get work. So a lot of that I didn't need from the school. I didn't expect the school. Really, what I wanted is to talk about art and hear critique. So I'm different than a lot of the other students that I think could have benefited from more. I don't even remember we had a class about all that stuff, which I think later maybe they did, and other school I know they do, right?
We did have one class, one semester called professional artist, I think is what it was called.
Okay, I didn't take those because I was not interested. I knew how to do it, you know, for I was already doing design by then. Let's say, I mean, they were talking about 2000, so I graduated probably 11, 12 years. So I was already senior as a designer in that sense. I had my own studio, one man studio, but I did run a project with other people, you know, like hiring other people. So I oversaw other people. So all that like paperwork, taxes, sending up your book portfolio, all that stuff I did before and while I was in art institute. So I didn't go to that class. I probably could have taught the teacher, you know, because I already had the experience, and it wasn't theoretical; it was practical experience. So in that sense, I cannot answer your question. I think from looking from the outside, yes, they could have given the student more. For me, one of the things that I was missing in the art institute, and not because I liked it so much, but now I know I should have got more, is the academics. I think, and again, not because of the instructors. I had amazing instructor Anna Novakov and the others. More how the curriculum and also the students there again. I remember a class, and again, I was maybe older and more mature than some of them, especially when I took it with the BA students, the academic class. I remember standing in class and telling the class, like, can you guys start talking? Because I'm the only one who's talking here. And this is not going to work if only I talk and the teacher. So I forgot the name. So she came and stood behind me and she was like, I'm going to hide behind Yoram right now. And you know, that always bothered me when they're just sitting there and they're just expecting, like we talked about this spoiled part, expecting the instructor to do the work for them and not realizing that we all suffer from it there's no discussion in an academic class. You know, this is like theory. What you cannot make work, you have to talk about stuff. If everyone is silent and if people are not reading the essay, they're not coming prepared, they're not screwing the instructor. They have their education, they have their knowledge. It's us who's going to suffer. And there was something about the dynamic in the art institute, like this is maybe not as cool as doing actual physical projects. You know, going to the academic is like something that. Now, again, I'm generalizing. There were different students who were much more involved and all that, but overall, I feel like that part, the academic, was pretty weak. Also, CCA at that time started doing theses, which we didn't have, which I thought was a great thing. Just, this is still, you're getting a BA degree. I mean, this is college. You're supposed to know to write essays. You're supposed to do research. You're supposed to present. Not in the Art Institute at the time. Maybe they changed. I don't know.
When leaving school, did you feel like you were prepared for the real world?
What do you mean by the real world?
I think that's an excellent question in and of itself. the arts world, the industry, the business, all of this stuff. Like, I mean, it's one of those things like when I graduated, I was incredibly arrogant and I was like, okay, I got all this shit figured out. I can do this. And you get out there and then you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, no, I didn't know any of that.
I feel like graduate school was one of the learning posts on my way. There were different steps. My undergraduate degree in English literature was really formative. It created a foundation for me of learning and scholarship and conceptual framework that I still stand on today. Graduate school was really about figuring out the trade, the practice, how to be my best making self, and so didn't really, what I was after for graduate school didn't really relate to doing things like the business of art. It really just was the purest. The Art Institute as a school is really about pure form and concept, like the purity of art. I don't know. I would say that the school really was about that for me. And other schools are different, And it wasn't about a school of thought. The teachers weren't teaching a school of thought. They wanted you to dig deep and be exactly who you were supposed to be as a maker. So then, moving into the world, I thought after I will figure the professional side out and tried different things. And I think we're all probably still trying to figure that out. Even those who are our teachers are probably still trying to figure out that life work balance and how much time you spend trying to make money and how much time do you try to spend freelancing and how much time do you try to spend making. It kind of is an ongoing art. But I think the Art Institute prepared me for what I really needed. It gave me the confidence to pursue my own work and vision, and it gave me contacts and a community of friends that I am still close to and meet with today, some of them in critique groups. And it gave me an understanding of what working artists did and what that looked like in a practical sense. Like that was really the question I wanted answered. What is it to be an artist, a working artist in the world? And I wasn't surrounded by artists in my own life. My family did very different things. So that was what I needed to know. Like, how do you do this? What can this look like? What is the juggle, or what? I didn't know. And that was where the teachers, you look at them and you see how they're doing it. And that can be a very different package. Maybe they're teaching and then they're working on their own work in summers. Maybe they're doing editorial work. It could be, a number of things. So that was really valuable to me.
I think I was naive, so I felt prepared.
We all were. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I wasn't worried. I just got into my studio and I painted every day. And then I was lucky enough to get this gallery. So, you have a show and you're going to have a show, you have to make the work. So, you can't say, I'm sorry, I changed my mind. I don't want to, I don't want to do this. So, I mean, it's just like through pressure, you get the work done. And then, you feel so good about it and you just keep doing it. It's a great feeling to do a body of work and show it. This is something I have taught my students to really focus on one thing and learn how to do it well. If you want to get your work out there, do a body of work, a series. And anyway, so I started doing that and I loved it. And so it sustained me, and I wanted to keep doing it.
I don't know if I felt prepared. Maybe in terms of doing my artwork and being able to develop a project and go through with the whole work and having the discipline, I was very well prepared. I think I actually could have done that even before grad school, coming out of the art school in Germany, because I was very individual focused. You didn't get assignments in Germany. You went in there knowing that you were doing your own work from the beginning, actually. So that part, I think I was very well prepared. Was I prepared for all the other stuff that came with it and that I didn't quite know, as we were saying, the thing about writing about your work and marketing yourself? No, I was not prepared for that at all. That came as a surprise, kind of, and something that I only slowly caught up with, and never caught up with the marketing part until up to today. I do not do that in any functional way, unfortunately. Was there a second part to your question?
Nope, that's enough.
How do I see it today?
Well, yeah, I mean, the question was like, it's like one of those things. Like when I got out of grad school, I thought I was like, okay, I understand it. I understand how the art world works. I can do this. I can play this game. And now looking back, I was so naive. Like I did not understand how to play the game. There were so many, because part of it is there were so many things that I feel like, part maybe because of our age or maybe because of our instructors or whatever, they didn't tell us, so like maybe we weren't ready to hear it or understand it or whatever. But like now, hearing some of the same things that were said to me in art school make a lot more sense because of having experiences that, right out of art school, I didn't have those experiences, but now I have the real experiences and I'm like, oh, that's what they meant by that. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah. I remember one teacher kept saying to me, yes, that's all great work, but what is your commodity? And I was like, is this something I should be concerned about? Is this something I should be thinking about? I had no answer to the question. I was just totally overwhelmed by that question.
Looking back, I would say things turned out really good. So there's nothing I can say that I don't feel like a sense of like I missed something. I don't think I missed something. One could question whether I missed a terrific art career as an active artist, but I think I made a clear choice, which I'm fully, kind of settled with, and I feel great about. It's nothing, I do have a camera, and I always have kind of the most up to date camera the market has to offer. It just sits in a bag, honestly. So, maybe I need to feel that I have the tools if I ever want to make use of them. But the fact that I don't do it means that I still don't have the passion for it. I mean, I know how to do it if I wanted to. Not to say that I will instantly, put a show on or someone will even want to show my work. But that passion is for me, at least, it's not there. So the one thing I would, I guess the whole conversation with you is also about, graduating from art school and, how has life turned on, who's in the arts, who's not. And for me, it just turned out that my passion went for biking. I mean, my passion used to be photography and it shifted toward mountain biking, which is great.
Well, I've loved it. I mean, I love my life. I love being an artist. I'm so glad I went to SFAI. I think it was a wonderful school. It was perfect for me. I think of Sam Chakalian a lot and Pat Klein, and you probably, Brett Reichman. They were painting teachers. So for me, they were important, really supported me. Pat Klein in particular, and Pagan Brook. And I don't know, being an artist is a great life, I think. For me, it's been wonderful. And yeah, I mean, I'm very happy in the last 20 years for taking that route.
But to a certain extent, you have also got to admit that the schooling, like at the time, so we're talking, school, higher education 20 years ago, they weren't teaching us about the idea of making money from your art. They were, focusing on craftsmanship, concepts, art history,
Theory.
all these kind of
Theory.
things, theory, but nothing about how to actually make a life as a practicing artist. They never even tried to teach us that.
No, this is true. Yeah, maybe there's a contract or something with some devil over here and another one over here that says, "Oh, don't tell them. Don't tell them. Let them flounder. See how creative they really are." And those, I mean, there's lots of successful, people that probably came out of the years that we were there, and before and after. They find their way. Whether it's just good, good luck or timing, or it's actual, good artwork.
Or business savvy. I mean, there are many different reasons.
Yeah. And that's the other thing now. You think about that. Yeah. So 20 years ago, how it's set up, kind of, the internet's just getting started, but, how it used to be. And I worked at art galleries, through my time chasing this whole thing. And you see it from the other side. But you have galleries. This is, there's no Etsy out there. There's no ArtNet or whatever.
Etsy, that's your go-to place for art.
Sorry. Yes, that's another conversation too.
Artsy, I believe, is what you meant to say.
Artsy. Yeah, ArtNet, art, whatever.
Saatchi now.
Saatchi. Yes. I think I've got my stuff on there somewhere.
We all do. Everybody does. And it never sells. Out of all the people I've ever spoken to, only one person has ever sold one thing through Saatchi.
Yeah. So in our minds, we're told, you got to get a gallery. You go to the gallery, or you court the gallery, whether you're just hanging out there all the time, the one that you really want to be in, or you're sending your stuff to all the time, trying to catch the eye, and I think most of the times it doesn't work out, and you end up going to somewhere down the street, the little guy. Or I had some luck in the beginning and for a while after with galleries, and I've sold some art over the years. Never got rich off of it, but it was like, yeah, you this is the way you do it. If you don't do it this way, you're gonna fail. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the luck that I had in the beginning again comes back to, I was just concentrating on making the art. I'm just making the art. I'm in the right place, and the right person saw the work, and it went from there. But I mean, I was never chasing down the the gallerist to please love my art. So it just happens. And I think that a lot of the the good stuff gets seen because people are looking for that. And not to say that my stuff is good stuff, but I don't know, somebody liked it. But now you think about it, the market has become something completely different. You still have the galleries, they have to change too. They're there to make money for the most part. There's the the big time dealers that are making money that I suppose in the beginning were they were there for the artists. They're trying to find and promote something that they believe in, and trying to help an artist. I don't know what you believe on that stuff, but now all those artists that couldn't get into a gallery can now do their own thing, right? So now we see, right? Now we can see all the bad art on Etsy.
No, the bad art's on Instagram.
Oh yes, Instagram. So now here's all the artists. Okay, they were all hiding. So now that everything's saturated with all the artists, and I guess you could be a gallery if you wanted to be a gallery on the internet, on whatever platform you want to be on. So it seems to me that in the end and in the beginning, in my mind, it's like I'm just going to promote myself to the best of my abilities. Not to get rich, but just to be able to keep making art. I promote myself. I make enough work to have a show every year, and I get a space donated, or I pay whatever to have a show. And maybe I lose money, maybe I don't. And luckily for me, almost every time I came out ahead. I never went in the hole, which is, that's perfectly fine. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. And people got to see the work and they bought the work. So.
Do I remember correctly? There was an undergrad class, not for us. I think it was an undergrad. It was more for undergrads who probably didn't know they have to make slides. But I do remember explanations on how to write your bio, or, like the tone, the third person, basic stuff like that. I know now it sounds, but I think at the time I wasn't all news, and now it is, obviously. Anyway, there was that. I'm not saying it was amazing. I'm saying they tried, but that's not enough. And it didn't really help much, because it didn't tell you, keep in touch with your professors. Keep talking. Keep in touch with your colleagues.
And keeping in touch with your classmates.
Exactly.
If you had the opportunity now to go teach a professional practices course, what would be something that you think is very important for the younger generation to know that you sort of maybe learned in your life after graduate school?
I mean, I think it's about showing up, and I think it's about making the connections with people, and a lot of it, I think, is confidence. And some people I look and it's like, wow, you really are fake it till you make it. But I think other people genuinely sort of exude that. Like, there's such a difference between like the millennial art world and I feel like what we had, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like this. Obviously, this is good. I have this many followers. It's like, no, it's not obvious. But I mean, I remember writing thank you notes back in the day, and like handwritten thank you notes. And when people would buy something, or collectors, I would write them a note, or if I had the chance to meet them or sign the piece for them or something like that. Like, that kind of stuff was important to me. And I really, both Heather Marks and her husband, Steve Zavatero, when they had the gallery, I mean, I'm still friends with them. They were invited to my daughter's wedding, and I'm with Nancy Hoffman now in New York. And she's lovely. And I really make sure to keep up that relationship and not take it for granted. So honestly, I don't know what the answer is now in sort of getting into the art world now, really. Because people are like, well, you haven't had a show, she hasn't given you a show in X number of years. And it's like, well, yeah, because there's all these other artists and it's her prerogative what she puts on the wall. And the model has changed so much. Like, I think galleries have put so much time into going to these art fairs and spending gazillions of dollars going to art fairs. Like, I would hate to be a gallerist right now and have that pressure of shipping work and showing up and installing and standing under the fluorescent lights for 3 days. Yeah, I always I feel like you got to be gracious and kind, and try to talk to as many people as you can and keep working.
So I took a few professional practice classes in New York after school. I would not have taken one at the Art Institute because I was such a purist. I just wanted to learn the practice of art and take in everything about the art making. And I figured, well, I'll just figure it out when I get out there. But then I think the professional practices classes taught me, that there is a structure there in place, that while you feel like you're just freewheeling it, there are some very valuable things to know. So those were helpful, and maybe that would have been good. I don't know that I would have done it, but I think there was a professional practices class that I didn't take there. I don't know. Maybe you don't
You
need to
didn't
learn
miss
it until you're
anything.
in it. So I didn't miss it. Yeah, I guess that's what I've been trying to figure out since the Art Institute is how do you translate this passion and thing that you're good at into using other skills that maybe are more raw, and how to get better at all of that.
Just self-promotion, doing, succeeding by one, making the work, but by promoting yourself. And now that it's become an easier thing to do, get creative. Now you're trying to, figure out what that looks like, and how to make it, a successful venture. But when I think about like a gallery with all that it can do for you, unless you're something really really different and special, you're not gonna get rich off of it. Even if you get into a really great gallery, maybe you have a show, maybe you won't. You're not gonna make enough to just make art all the time. It's gonna be difficult. So in a gallery, it'll take generally 50% of whatever your work is selling for. So in my mind now, it's like, why don't I just, set my price for my market, for my art, and take half of that, whatever that is, and advertise myself. Take that money and put it into some algorithm in Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, and actually advertise my work so that people can see it and it goes to the right people. And now you can get to the right people. There's a pool of people that love this hashtag. This is their hashtag that they want to look at.
It's actually a legitimate idea. The idea of like basically like, so you work up your retail price of a piece of art, and then you say, okay, instead of paying a gallery to sell this on my behalf, I'm going to take 50% of that retail price and put it towards advertisements on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah. And I think it's an easy thing to do now. I haven't actually done it yet, but maybe I will.
I was going to say, like, that's a cunning plan.
Yeah, I mean, it seems logical to me. You make that investment, and it's for you, and you're going to do it constantly. And a gallery will promote you, like when your show comes up. For the most part, you won't have the connections that the gallery might have.
Yeah, but there's never even a guarantee that those connections will work.
I know. I think that self-promotion is the thing that should be taught now in the education sector. And maybe it is. I don't know. You would know better than me. Are these things being taught now?
Some schools certainly do it, but not enough.
Yeah.
There's a saying, there's two types of artists. There are the fortress artist, and then there's a constellation artist. So the fortress artist is the artist that has all the bricks in line, and all the bricks look the same. So a lot of cases, painters are fortress artists. Like Ed Ruscha is a fortress artist. Lichtenstein is a fortress artist, and they keep on building their castle, and their castle is impenetrable. But that's what the market likes. The market likes fortress artists. Whereas then you have constellation artists, which are artists maybe like Mike Kelly, and I'm only naming Western artists because we're talking about in relationship to school and stuff like that. Of course, there's other artists, but for people to relate there's two things happening. There's the fortress artist and the constellation. So the constellation artist, let me describe more. It's basically you are a planet or you are the sun. And these things are orbiting you, and you're just trying to grab all these ideas and these things, and you're experimenting and taking these things into your orbit. Now, these things exist all, there's not one or the other. There's a spectrum between all these things, but market likes fortress artists. The constellation artists are more the risky, more experimental ones that I think are the more interesting ones, you know? And I always want to strive to be more of a constellation artist. And I think that's what I'm doing, especially even to the point where I'm not even artist centric anymore, as in I'm not placing myself in the middle. I'm building a community with other artists and stuff like that. So, and that's why I added the plus to my last name. It's when I started working with AI, so it's Peter Wu Plus. The plus is silent when you pronounce it, but it. I'm just laughing because you're laughing.
Just to be clear, is that
Yeah.
PLUS or the plus symbol?
Plus symbol. But for me, I was working with AI, and I realized that the things that it was producing were sometimes better than what I was producing, and even like text wise, it was producing things that are way more, say, poetic or stuff like that. So I started collaborating with AI, and I realized that it was no longer just about me. And then when the pandemic happened, it just made sense to carry the plus and just keep that in a certain way, because once I started doing the gallery, and it was like me creating the environment and the context and curating, and then having all these artists participate, it was me plus this community in a certain way.
Yeah, definitely. Like everything that has to do with marketing yourself, or with, writing proposals for exhibitions, for artist residencies, writing grants, all of those things, they were not taught at all. And I felt totally overwhelmed by them in the beginning. I had no freaking idea. Luckily, there were a few people who, gave me some advice on it, and I kind of learned how to do it a little bit. I don't think I'm a very good grant writer. I have had help with that sometimes, but grants are hard to come by anyways as an individual artist in the United States, if you are not an organization or anything. And I mean, I have been quite successful in applying to artist residencies. I've done a lot of artist residencies, really a lot. And so, at some point you figure out how to do that. But I think that's definitely something that I would say they really, really neglected in our arts education, where they just did not teach you that at all. And in Germany, not at all. I mean, none of it. It was almost like, we are not talking about that. That's something that just needs to come naturally. And, like all of that, we were totally sheltered from any of that, anything that had to do with exhibiting and, how you do that. And I don't think SFAI did a good job at it either. We didn't have any instruction on it at all. And I think in one of your previous interviews, I actually heard you say that you felt like, that we are trained as artists and not as writers. And are any writers actually, are they asked to draw an image, a picture of what their next book is about? But we are always asked to write about our projects, right? And I'm totally with you on that. I'm not a terrible writer, but I'm also not a great writer. I can write about my work, but where I think where I have difficulties if it comes to grants, and you have to kind of put your mind into the other person's, what do they want? And they have all these requirements. You have to research the grant giver, and, it's kind of like this whole other world, how they will be looking at your proposal and what they are interested in, which might be something completely different than what you are interested in, only that there is a way for you to actually formulate your work differently so that it fits within their idea, right? But that is something I'm not very good at.
But that is the game.
Yes, that is the game. Exactly. Yes, that is the game. Exactly. And that is something that I'm not very good at.
Well, but I have to admit, you do seem very good at getting residencies, because like you seem to have done it from reasonably early on. I saw them all the way back at like to 2006, I think, on your CV. But like, I didn't even realize residencies were quite as worthwhile to do and of a benefit and all this kind of stuff. Like, I didn't even understand that residencies were that. I always knew about them, but I was always like, oh well, that's something somebody else does. I didn't really think that was ever something that was an opportunity for me. But now I've realized that it was an opportunity for me that I neglected. And but you seem to have done it really, really well. And so, like, how has these opportunities of these residencies helped you or not helped you, I guess, in your career?
Well, I mean, actually, I did my first artist residency, I think, in that same summer when we graduated in 2001. And I know I got the I made my application according to, this was before the internet was very big. So there were these folders down at the, I can't remember, what was it called? Student relations. I can't remember what the office was called at SFAI. But I looked in these folders and and there were all these residency programs, and I applied to that one and I got in, and I went that same summer and I really loved it. And that was a place called Art Farm in Nebraska. And after that, I just kept applying to them. And they really, really, really helped me over those crazy years after I moved back to Germany in 2002 and then came back to the US in 2005 and didn't quite know what was going to happen because I didn't have a green card yet. And I was here as basically just kind of an extended visitor, and I couldn't take a job and all of that. The residencies really, really helped me getting through those years and being able to do my artwork, being able to sustain myself. Because at that time, most of the residencies were free, or they even gave you a little bit of a scholarship or something. So I got by with almost no, I didn't have to, I had some savings, but I didn't need to invest a lot of my money actually, because I had so many residencies. And every time I was back in the Bay Area, I would just have a sublet, which at that time was pretty easy to get still, for a few months. And then I would go off to the next residency. So really, those were really where I developed most of my arts projects. Most of the things I do now originated at some sort of artist residency. So yes, I really love artist residencies. They were very instrumental for me in becoming an artist and, a self-sufficient artist who is just doing her own work. And yeah, they were probably almost like, I don't know, maybe they were an extension of my arts education in a sense.
I don't know that they really address the determination and the time, the devotion it takes to really continue making work, continue developing the work, continue, trying to get the work out in the world if you want to get the work out in the world. It like takes your whole being in a way. I mean, it's such a focus of my life. And I feel that if you don't give it a lot of time and you don't feel that way, it's just, it would be really hard to get the work out and like into galleries or museums. It would be impossible, it seems. Like you really need to be devoted to this part of your life. It becomes, like let's say I don't have any food for dinner or something, and Stephen is very wonderful about that. But it's like that's got to go to the side. I don't have time to go to the food store. I have to finish a painting and so it becomes, you know, sort of number one, in your life. And so it really does help to be with a partner who honors that. Stephen is great. If I'm down in my studio, I could be in here for 8 hours. It could be 9 o'clock at night. We haven't eaten dinner. He doesn't come down and say, "Where's dinner?" or anything like that, which is great. Or are we going to have dinner even? So he really respects my time in the studio. And I think it's so important. At least for me, it is.
Well, I mean, that's part of the thing that, like, back even just 20 years ago when we were in art school, the impression, so like, and there's a difference between like reality and fact and the impression. The impression is that artists could just sit in their studio, smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and like do their bohemian lifestyle. And like that's the life, the romanticized idea of being an artist. But even back then, it was never true. It was just always sort of the impression. And when the reality is that I feel like my opinion is we should have been taught a little bit more about the business side of how to be a practicing artist. Because while the Art Institute was amazing, it was my best education. I have no problems with the schooling, except the fact that I don't feel like I was prepared with any of the knowledge or skill set for how to run the business of my arts.
I think you're right. We didn't get any of that.
No. I mean, they were great with craftsmanship, concepts, like skills, like they were great with all that. Art history, even. Mark Van Proyen, love the guy. But
And Bergson, remember Bergson?
I don't remember
You don't
Bergson. I think
remember Bergson?
no, Mark Van Proyen was a bit larger than life,
Yeah,
so he's sort of a
he's brilliant. Yeah.
but I mean, but they didn't prepare us for the realities that we were going to be facing. And I think these days, with things like social media and Instagram and the push of like being extremely productive and selling your own work instead of giving it to a gallery to do all that sort of business side of it kind of stuff, it puts a lot more pressure on us these days.
So much. Yeah. And I think for the main part, artists don't want to do that anyway. I mean, we want to make art.
I got into the arts because I did not want to work in business.
Yeah.
I got into the arts because of Say Anything, the movie, John Cusack. I don't want to produce anything made or sold or make anything sold or produced, and I don't want to sell anything produced or made. Like, I just want to hang with your daughter. That's it.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a difficulty to think about the business end of art making and having to do it all by yourself. I don't think I could navigate that because I'm just not interested in that. And so if you're not interested, it's really hard to tackle it, if you are. Another thing I think today, you really have to, or I see people that really make it they really push their art verbally. They're talking about it. You say, "How are you?" They say, "I just had a show here. I just had a show there, and I am going to have a museum show." And it's all about talking about your work. And I mean, that's not my personality. So it's really hard for me to do that. But I see it a lot and think, oh, okay, this is all part of it. You can't be reticent. You have to really get yourself out there. You have to lead with what you're doing and what you're showing and all of that. And so for those of us who are not like that, it's tough. It feels, yeah, it feels tough.
What did you ever do any like grants or
No.
residencies or anything like that? No? Okay.
I love my house, and so I don't wanna do a residency, although it looks like fun because I would love to, be somewhere and just do my art, but my studio feels so much like that. When I'm in here, I mean, no one bothers me. It's not like I have a lot of kids running around the house it's not like I have anything I need to get away from. And just to do these residencies because, like, you have to do a residency, I'm not willing to do that. I mean, I know that's the thing, you have to have a lot of residency things on your bio today, or it looks good if you do, but I'm not willing to do something I don't really feel like I need to do just so it shows up on my bio. So, no, I haven't done that, and I have not applied for grants.
Well, like you also mentioned, like, the sort of the salesmanship nature of it these days. And it's interesting because I've noticed there is actually a distinct difference between American and European artists in that way. That in like, especially like grant writing and then even social media, the Europeans are much more like, this is my exhibition here, and that's it. And whereas Americans are like, I have this amazing, fabulous opportunity to, participate in this thing with all these amazing people and like tag 100 people in it, kind of thing. And they go crazy with it. Like
Yeah.
it's something that like at growing up, I felt like, or in school and just in general in the art world, I felt like we were encouraged to, actually, I take it back. I was told by a teacher specifically at the Corcoran, Frank DePerna is the one who told me is that like that our role in writing like artist statements and things like this and bios is to be our own cheerleader. Like we have to like convince people that we're worth being interested in. And that's not true in Europe. They don't do that at all, and that never has been their way. And I found it very interesting, the difference between these two. I like the European way better.
I do too.
Yeah, that cheerleadery sort of being, I mean, it's being almost it's a fine line to being arrogant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm really, I don't want to say shy that way, but yeah, it's just not my way. I mean, for me, an artist statement is you just don't use all these gobbledygooky art terminology. Just say very succinctly what the work is about, what you hope the viewer gets from the work, and that's it. You know, without trying to sell the work. You don't want to say anything negative about your work, of course, but yeah, I like the European way too.
So when I graduated undergrad, I think I took a year off or maybe like 9 months. And I was like, oh, I have to go back. I can't regress into this lifestyle that I had, that I'm comfortable with prior to moving to San Francisco. I moved back to Sacramento and I really wanted to go back to grad school. I applied to Yale and, of course, all the big schools. And I was accepted, of course, to SFAI. And I said, if I go to SFAI, I'm going to study something different than I did undergrad. Undergrad, it was mostly painting and drawing, interdisciplinary. And in graduate school, it was sculpture and new genres. So I really enjoyed that different viewpoint. When I was a young student, mostly a painter and drawer, I really despised the new genres, mostly because of it came across as very elitist and simplistic, and I didn't completely understand the focus on the conceptual ramifications of that work. Many of the work seemed very silly and trivial, but now I realize it's also important. So the same with photography. I think that perhaps, and I think that there was a class that started to do this, and I think you might have taken it. I don't know how effective.
Professional practices.
Yes, I didn't take that class.
I took it. It was horrible. It taught us nothing.
So I think instead of professional practice is possible pathways for postgraduate, pathways for students that don't want to go into teaching, pathways for students that want to pursue the art world. And when I mean the art world, for example, someone like Kehinde Wiley, I'm sorry, was that his right last name? I don't know, but Kehinde did the painting of Obama. He was my classmate in undergraduate. So like,
oh, I was like, he was our classmate. I'm like, what?
So I think that most students, including myself, were in that mindset. Like, I want to be in the art world. I want to have a gallery. I want to be able to just live off of the funds that I get from making art and making the reality visible that our school is, or the art SFAI was specifically that. Teaching wasn't ever really mentioned. It was, how are you going to participate in this contemporary art world? So that's a really hard question to ask, because I don't think that education should necessarily direct you for your future. It should help you create different circumstances and moments for you to decide, what am I going to do with this now? You know, how am I going to effectively use this, whether I'm create a business or whether I go into teaching or whether I try to pursue the rat race, which is the art world, you know, how much bullshit you're going to have to put up with. Yeah.
To wrap this up, I'd like to thank you for listening all the way to the end of the conversation. We would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, studio mates, or anybody with an interest in arts and creative endeavors. The building and strengthening of the arts and creative community is at the core of our mission for this podcast. They can listen and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are produced by 5014. The audio was edited by Kush Audio Services, and the music was created by Pete Bybee. The Wise Fool Art Podcast is supported in part by an EEA grant from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway in an effort to work together for a green, competitive, and inclusive Europe. We would also like to thank our partners Hunt Kastner in Prague, Czech Republic, and Kunstsentrene i Norge in Norway. Links to EEA grants and our partner organizations are available in the show notes or on our website, wisefoolpod.com.